I don't think that you're seeing that Tyra is a complete bitch.
That was frank.
Thank you.
Welcome to Sleepover Cinema, where we analyze the TV shows that created the collective unconscious of those who know Jesus is a biscuit and let him sop them up. I'm Hannah Leach, a multidisciplinary artist, podcast producer, and tired-ass showgirl.
And I'm Audrey Leach, director, editor, producer, and Gila monster. We are the sister duo, also known as Tuping Productions, and we haven't stopped thinking about these shows since we first saw them.
We're going to explore the good, the bad, and the nonsensical of the media that first inspired our love for pop culture in an attempt to answer the question, is it actually good? And at the end of the day, do we really care if it is?
Today we are talking about perhaps one of our most formative texts, RuPaul's Drag Race.
RuPaul's Drag Race. Start your engines. RuPaul's Drag Race. May the best woman win. RuPaul's Drag Race. Start your engines. RuPaul's Drag Race. May the best woman, best woman.
Welcome to the workroom, everyone. For our season 9 finale, we decided it was time to address the elephant in the room, which is RuPaul's Drag Race, a show that we very much have a superiority complex surrounding, as we have been watching this show since 2012.
I was going to start this off by saying it's another day in the workroom. And I really just am curious what the other girls are going to bring today.
Last week, the showings left something to be desired, and I know that I'm not going to be in the bottom. We will have a designated moment for the superiority complex later on, but we're just here to discuss a show that has shaped us. Maybe you'll learn something about Drag Race along the way, because I do have some info to share. Wait, I also need to address the fact that this is the second week in a row that I am wearing a wig. I have this wig made by Wigs by Vanity, which is the company that is partially owned by Courtney Act and partially owned by her business partner, who's another drag queen. But I've had this since 2018, and you can tell because she needs a good reset. I did my best. Okay, so RuPaul's Drag Race premiered on February 2nd, 2009, and is churning out new episodes to this very day. There are 16 main US seasons. There are a trillion spinoffs, which we'll get to later. And on the American show, there have officially been more than 200 queens that have gotten their moment in the spotlight. Now, what network is Drag Race on? From 2009 to 2016, the show was on Logo, and then on VH1 from 2017 to 2022, and then on MTV from last year to now. There are 207 episodes to date, hosted and produced by RuPaul. The show is judged by RuPaul and Michelle Visage consistently. And then there is a rotating panel of judges, but the most frequent judges are Carson Kressley, Ross Matthews, and T.S. Madison. However, there have been a lot of really notable guest judges, including, but not limited to, Bob Mackie, Michelle Williams, Dita Von Teese, Niecy Nash, Debbie Reynolds, Lily Tomlin, Vanessa Williams, Ariana Grande, Lena Dunham, Lady Gaga, Christina Aguilera, Pam Anderson, Amber Rose, Wayne Brady, Fantasia Barrino, and about a zillion more. So it's a very star-studded affair.
The synopsis. According to Next Avenue article, RuPaul's Drag Race and the First 10 Years of Fabulousness. Hosted by RuPaul, the 4-time Emmy-winning reality TV competition combines elements of American Idol, Project Runway, and The Real World. Contestants create and choreograph original production numbers, design their own fabulous looks, and divulge their personal backstories before one is told to sashay away at the end of each episode.
And of course, this is all in a quest to crown America's next drag superstar, which at the beginning of the show, I think held a bit more weight, because now there are a trillion next drag superstars, but that is also something to talk about later. So how did Drag Race come to be? You have to start with the question, who is RuPaul? So RuPaul was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and he lived with his 3 sisters and his mother. I have all this memorized. This is not in the notes. And he was like a fabulous little child. And when his mom was pregnant, she went to a psychic who told her that her son was destined to be famous. And RuPaul, when he was told that, internalized this as a prophecy that he would one day be a superstar in the eyes of America. So that's his backstory. And then in 1987, he moved to New York City and began his career in go-go bars and on TV with The Gong Show and being on MTV. In drag, RuPaul was standing, and probably still is standing, 6 feet and 5 inches tall, and had beautiful makeup and gowns, still has beautiful makeup and gowns, and therefore gained a lot of recognition and star power in the New York club scene. So then, of course, in 1993, he released the dance pop album, Supermodel of the World, which of course included Supermodel You Better Work. In addition to there being this music video where he strutted in a blonde wig and assorted glamorous outfits, the whole thing made him a surprise mainstream hit. He had parts in movies, including But I'm a Cheerleader, and signed a contract with MAC Cosmetics, becoming the first drag queen to become a spokesmodel for a major cosmetics company. 90s were all about RuPaul with the MAC campaign and, of course, Supermodel of the World, and he hosted a variety television program, The RuPaul Show, and was a frequent guest on other people's talk shows. His career was kind of stalling, nothing like atrocious, but he and his producing partners, which we will get to shortly, had the idea to make Drag Race. Beginning in 2009, that's when Drag Race kicked off. So of course his career was like blowing up and blowing up. And then in 2020, RuPaul co-created the TV series AJ and the Queen, in which he played a drag queen traveling across the United States, accompanied by a 10-year-old girl. It kind of flopped, but it was also a very interesting cultural moment. You may recall it if you're a Drag Race fan. It was really something to witness. And then just like another thing about RuPaul is that he is really prone to like speak in lofty, like spiritual turns of phrase kind of. So like here are 2 examples. It's about recognizing that you are God dressing up in humanity and you could do whatever you want. Next one. You are not your body. You are actually an extension of the power that created the whole universe. Which honestly, it sounds like he just read The Artist's Way, because that's very The Artist's Way of him.
We're all born naked and the rest is drag.
Yeah.
Don't take life too seriously. Don't take yourself too seriously. There's like a whole bunch of catchphrases that come to mind.
Whatever people think of me is none of my business. I really love that one. And also another one is your fear of looking stupid is making you look stupid, basically.
Oh, the inner saboteur.
Oh shit, yeah. How could we forget about the inner saboteur? Constantly invoking the inner saboteur.
It's to the point where like queens will talk about their inner saboteur in like a self-referential way on the show. Like
yes.
Referencing the inner saboteur is like, it means more than one thing at this point.
Yeah, it's like a meme unto itself. Okay, so now that we know all about RuPaul, we have to get into the people that actually made the show, the production company. So it's produced by World of Wonder, aka Randy Barbado and Fenton Bailey. They have obviously made an empire with Drag Race, but interesting fact, they actually formed a disco pop rock duo called the Fabulous Pop Tarts, and upon meeting began performing regularly at Danceteria and other clubs in downtown New York City. How did Drag Race actually begin happening? So RuPaul met Randy and Fenton at a music seminar in Manhattan, and ultimately they hit it off, and ultimately the 2 men would become RuPaul's managers and best friends. So this is from the article that we were quoting earlier. Barbados started conversations with RuPaul about a reality show in 2004, around the time he and his frequent collaborator, Michelle Visage, began co-hosting a morning radio show in New York. Having just released Star Booty, the fourth installment in his Secret Agent supermodel series, RuPaul was ready to return to show business, but he resisted the idea of a reality competition show because he believed the genre was mean-spirited. He was quoted as saying, "The Obama movement was happening, and I could feel it in my bones that it was time." And then we have Tom Campbell, who is another major producer of this show. He was the CEO of WoW in 2017. This guy came up with the show's format and its titular pun, while the producers and RuPaul came up with challenges based on the obstacles drag stars face early in their career. And then just as a little side note, nearly every single episode of American Drag Race has been directed by Nick Murray. So shout out to Nick Murray for your service. This is what RuPaul has to say about the show. Our show exemplifies the movement of a bigger consciousness arising. Drag is part of that. It's having fun and understanding who you really are. I think the audience relates to that without even knowing specifically that that's the thing. Watching a drag queen who was bullied as a kid becoming a star on her own terms is a rush for a lot of people because they too have longed for something but didn't know what.
So because Drag Race and talking about Drag Race, I mean, at this point, we're talking about 15 years of history that we cannot cover every single season in its full depth. And if you intend to watch the seasons but haven't, skip the next 25 seconds. But in case you already do know this information, I want to shout out all the winners of Drag Race because we're not going to have time to talk about all of them. So from the very beginning, Bibi Zahara Benet, Tyra Sanchez, Raja, Sharon Needles, Jinx Monsoon, Bianca Del Rio, Violet Chachki, Bob the Drag Queen, Sasha Velour, Aquaria, Evie Oddly, Jada Essence Hall, Simone, Willow Pill, and Sasha Colby. That is not counting All-Stars winners or winners of any other country. Okay, critical reception. RuPaul's Drag Race has received several awards and nominations, including 27 Primetime Emmy Awards, 3 Producers Guild of America Awards, 6 MTV Movie and TV Awards, and two, that's like nothing, 2 GLAAD Media Awards, among others.
Common Sense Media rated Drag Race 4 out of 5 stars. Drag Queen Contest is campy, fun, and has positive messages, and is appropriate for ages 15 plus. Parents need to know that RuPaul's Drag Race is a series where drag performers compete for a title, money, and commercial opportunities. It includes lots of sexual innuendo, including references to various sex acts and blurred nudity, and a fair bit of strong language. The term bitch is often used, while curses like fuck and shit are bleeped. Over the years, the series has helped popularize drag culture as well as brought many LGBTQ performers into the spotlight, often promoting acceptance and compassion for communities that were once heavily marginalized. Families can talk about stereotypes. Do the contestants in RuPaul's Drag Race reinforce or undermine stereotypes typically associated with the LGBTQ community? How are other communities stereotyped, both in the media and out of it? Over the years, notable actors like Milton Berle, Tony Curtis, Tom Hanks, and Robin Williams have famously performed in drag in films and on TV. Do you think their characters and performances are looked at differently than the ones given by the contestants here? If so, why not? Okay, so as for cultural impact, if this doesn't say enough, then I don't know what will. But Drag Race has spawned all of these spin-offs. Drag Race Down Under, Drag Race Germany, Belgium, Brazil, Canada versus the world, Chile, they call it the Switch Drag Race, Drag Race Global All-Stars, which is upcoming, France, Italy, Mexico, Holland, Philippines, Spain All-Stars, Sweden, Thailand, UK versus the world, Drag U, American All-Stars, Secret Celebrity Drag Race, and RuPaul's Drag Race Vegas Review, which is kind of a rare one. It was
it's because they were venturing into a new
Yeah.
business space, and that's why. The concept of UK versus the world still just eludes me. Like, why?
I mean, I
Like,
don't know
all
either.
of the other ones make sense to me, except for Canada versus the world and UK versus the world.
Yeah, that's when it just really feels like a money like a money grubbing situation. This is a blurb from an interview with journalist Maria Elena Fernandez, the author of And Don't Fuck It Up, an oral history of RuPaul's Drag Race, the first 10 years. Drag Race has elevated the community and given them a livelihood that they never had before. Being a drag queen before meant working in a nightclub at night and making a few $100s in tips if you were lucky. You might be the popular queen in your community, but that was the extent of it. Now drag is people selling out Wembley Stadium, selling their own merchandise, and being in Oscar-nominated movies. There's a whole part of the economy for people who sell makeup and make wigs and costumes. It's opened up this whole new business side. As Katya says in the book, the notion of a rich drag queen didn't exist until 5 years ago. Now some of them are buying houses in Palm Springs. Just one last thing before we get into our memories. Just some RuPaul controversies, because RuPaul is in his 60s, and of course this man has done some problematic things, but it is interesting to reflect on. So there are like two main things that have happened with RuPaul, and one of them is his approach to transgender people in drag. So here are just some quotes. These are from 2018. Drag loses its sense of danger and its sense of irony once it's not men doing it, because at its core, it's a social statement and a big FU to male-dominated culture. So for men to do it, it's really punk rock, because it's a real rejection of masculinity. And then an interviewer asked, can a transgender woman be a drag queen? It's an interesting area. Peppermint didn't get breast implants until after she left our show. She was identifying as a woman, but she hadn't really transitioned. You can identify as a woman and say you're transitioning, but it changes once you start changing your body. It takes on a different thing. It changes the whole concept of what we're doing. And it's also interesting because RuPaul's whole thing is that he's like, identity isn't real. We're all just butterflies in the wind. But then gets hung up on this sort of thing, which
really checks out to
isn't
me.
It,
like I'm like that makes a lot of sense to me.
There's a lot of confusion, especially in earlier seasons, about like, is the point to pass as a woman, or is the point to like express yourself creatively? It's murky. I mean, Peppermint was the first out trans woman to be on the show.
Yeah, there were.
Gia Gunn now like retroactively claims it, but Gia was not out.
Yeah, there are many that were not out on the show and then came out later as non-binary or trans. Yes, I can see why somebody would not be incentivized to show off their trans or non-binary identity if they were casted on Drag Race before like 4 years ago. Because it like wouldn't help you necessarily.
No, definitely not. Especially if RuPaul was weird about it.
Yeah.
Everyone's favorite thing to make fun of RuPaul for is RuPaul allowing fracking on his ranch in Wyoming. So in 2020, RuPaul had this interview with NPR where he talked about the fact that he was leasing out his ranch to multiple oil companies for the purpose of fracking. And if you don't know what fracking is, it involves blasting huge volumes of water mixed with toxic chemicals and sand deep into the earth to fracture rock formations and release oil and natural gas. It's an extreme form of energy production and endangers human health and the wildlands. So people just think it's really funny that RuPaul's ranch is a fracking site. Our memories of Drag Race. When did we start watching it? What have our most notable experiences with it been? I remember that around the era where Audrey was streaming Gossip Girl on her laptop on Netflix.
It was the year that streaming came out online. It was 2012.
Yes. I started watching Drag Race on my laptop, and the first season I watched was season 2. And at the time, the only seasons that were on there were season 2 and 3. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting on the ground of my high school bedroom, curling my hair and my extensions for whatever like show choir singing performance I had. and watching Drag Race at the same time and just feeling like so intrigued by everything that was going on. Also confused about like the gender presentation part of it, being because I was totally new to this. Like I knew what a drag queen was, but I had never like seen a drag show or really like observed it. I always felt like that was in my senior year, and I felt like throughout the second half of my senior year that I just felt like I knew something that none of these other people knew, which is that there just is so much more for like queer people out there in the world than being like a Kurt Hummel or something like that, which is not to put disrespect on Kurt Hummel's name, but I think you know what I mean if you're listening to this.
So yeah, same time for me. It must have been probably like 4 days after you started, something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember binging those seasons really quickly. I don't think I really talked to anybody. I feel like the show kind of felt like a secret that we had in a way, because even when we would tell our friends about it, they had no interest. Like there was no like driving force. Nobody felt like inspired to watch it. So we basically just knew all of this like information and then started watching the show as it aired live. Well, I know for a fact that the first finale we watched live was season 6. There was a hot minute there where season 4 and 5 were not yet on streaming, but we were watching season 6. So like, I'm pretty sure it was like we saw 2 and 3 because 1 wasn't available either. So we saw 2 and 3. Right. Watching 6 live, and then at some point they put 4 and 5 on streaming, went back, watched those, and then have just been there ever since.
Yeah. I personally think that I was in college for the kind of the golden era of Drag Race. It was 2013 through 2017. The season 9 finale episode, which we will talk about later, came out in the spring of my senior year of college. So I think that the first 4 years are probably like the most like evocative and like foundational, of course. But I also think in terms of the show like coming into itself and really turning into a cultural phenomenon, those were the years that I was in college.
Yes, and we both have gone to our fair share of Drag Race Queen shows and events. And then also just going to drag bars in New York City and just seeing whichever local queen was there. And I think there's a lot of talk about and attitude between like the local New York City queens and then like the New York City queens who go on the show. Like for example, there's a gay bar called Pieces in the West Village, and right before I moved, me and Hunter would go there kind of a lot because we grew a love for Bootsy LaFerris, who is not a Drag Race queen, but she's got like really strong opinions about not being a Drag Race queen. So that's just like another dichotomy that exists in the world. Like there definitely is like an attitude towards the commercialization of drag in a place like New York too, where so much was started and like grown there. It brought drag to like Playhouse Square in Cleveland, Ohio. Like I went to a Battle of the Seasons tour at like a big theater in Cleveland, Ohio when I was a teenager, which is like something that literally could not have happened 10 years prior, 15 years prior. It just didn't.
I have a couple like really good show memories. There's like 3 really good ones. One of them was that like right when I got to NYU, I was like really into Courtney Act and Adore and Bianca. I went to see Courtney Act's one-woman show at the Laurie Beachman Theater in Midtown Manhattan, and it was like in this little club room. And first of all, they didn't card, so I felt very elegant in that sense, with like Chardonnay and like creme brulee. And she was so good and she was so beautiful in person. I was so dazzled. I felt like I was seeing like a huge celebrity in a really tiny room for like $50. And I thought that was just like crazy. That was an incredible one. She sang Both Sides Now by Joni Mitchell. And I hate to say this, but it was my first exposure to that song. And it was such a weird first exposure to that song. But that's how that song entered my life in 2013. Around the same time, Halloween of my freshman year, there was this like Halloween mega show.
I have a story
in New
about
York,
this show
and
too.
it had like every Ru girl of relevance from that time. Also used a fake ID to get in there. I went with this girl who was like a former child star, and she got really, really drunk and like passed out in the crowd and had to leave. And then I was alone, and it was really strange. And I remember she like flirted with the bouncer to get us into VIP. We were so young. We were like 18. It was super weird. And then I saw Shangela do a split and break the shit out of her leg, and then she had to get carried out on a stretcher, and the stretcher went over the crowd and out the back door, and that was a very rock and roll moment. And then lastly, we went to a party. Chris of GBF fame and I went to a party in New York after the season 6 finale, and I somehow ended up like 3 feet away from Bianca, and I was really scared, but I was like, I need to take a picture with her. So I asked, and I have this like really good picture with Bianca Del Rio, and it was scary. I've also had ketchup wiped on my shoulder by Ben de la Creme, and I saw Adore Delano play a show in Dublin, Ireland on Halloween.
My Halloween, that same Halloween party story is just the fact that I tried to go with my new freshman year friend, and again with the fake IDs, I didn't. So you know how it's a classic question, the bouncer might ask you what your astrological sign is? I knew it was still the 26th, but it was February, and at the time I didn't know that would be Pisces. So he asked me what my sign was, and I either said the wrong one or said I didn't know, and he just like didn't buy it, and I was like, well, fuck. And so I didn't get to go, and my friend got in before me, and I was like, I looked at him and I was like, it's up to you, like if you can go if you want. And I don't think he did, which is really nice. My like freshman year BFF currently designs gowns with his partner for like all the biggest queens. Like he does costume design for the show We're Here, and I just want to shout out to him. He just like won an Emmy for his work. It's really incredible, and he's gotten to like design all these gowns for the biggest and the best. It's very cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That also reminds me that our beloved friend of the pod, Joey Donatelli, does like branding and packaging design for Trixie Cosmetics, and they do an amazing job. Mm-hmm. So like the Camp Trixie set, there's like a bunch of different things that they've done, like a ton of stuff.
Yeah, and then just basically the superiority complex is that when all of our friends did eventually join the bandwagon, it was like, where the hell have you been? Like,
yeah, it was also just very much like, oh, you have a lot of possession over this for someone who didn't watch it until 2015.
Yeah.
You know? It's not even 2015. It was even like 2017, 2018.
Yeah, it was like honestly like around Velour times, like Sasha Velour times.
Yeah, like season 9 is when people really started watching it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Which again, that's when college ended for me.
Tell me why they got Pearl and Violet Chachki for one of my freshman year events. And the craziest shit happened at that event. It was a drag bingo in like an NYU building, and somebody got so mad that, and there's like a picture of it. I don't remember what happened or like why anyone would be this angry, but basically like this other person tried to like take down like physically.
Wait, why?
I don't remember, but there's a picture of it and it's crazy.
Speaking of college, my one of my NYU application essays was about Drag Race and feeling inspired by the queens to be authentic. And I have been scouring for this thing. I found it not that long ago. I'm gonna look after this, and if I find it, I will do a dramatic reading.
Okay, so let's just say which episodes we covered and then break.
So we covered the pilot, Drag on a Dime. We covered season 2, episode 5, Here Comes the Bride, aka the Tyra is a complete bitch episode. We covered season 4, episode 8, Frenemies, aka the fallout to the Go Back to Party City Where You Belong episode. We covered Shade of the Rusical, aka the Courtney versus Adore showdown. This was season 6, episode 4. We covered season 9, episode 13, Reunited, and All Stars 2, episode 5, Revenge of the Queens, aka the Shut Up and Drive lip sync episode. And yes, are we cheating by doing All Stars? Yes. However, is it worth it? I would say yes. We kind of tried to do the newest episode.
I mean, I did see it.
I did not see it, and I watched like half of the pit stop, but I'm gonna let you be the authority on that episode when we get there. So all of those are on Paramount Plus except for the new one. So go indulge and meet us back here.
So if you're a loyal listener of Sleepover Cinema, you have definitely heard me talk a lot about seeing movies in theaters. I've been around the block. I've tried all the other chains and all their unlimited programs. And guess what? Regal Unlimited is where it's at.
Regal Unlimited is the all-you-can-watch movie subscription pass that pays for itself in just 2 visits. You can see any standard 2D movie anytime with no blackout dates or restrictions.
When you want to watch a movie in a premium format like 4DX, IMAX, RPX, or ScreenX, your Regal Unlimited membership gets you into those premium experiences at a reduced cost.
You're not just getting a discount on your thrilling experience, but on snacks.
I could have $5 left in my bank account, but I am going to get popcorn and an icy.
So, if you're planning on seeing 2 movies this month, you need to join Regal Unlimited. So, sign up now in the Regal app if you want to be fancy, or on regmovies.com/unlimited. That's regmovies.com/unlimited.
New subscribers can use code REG2PINK for 10% off Regal Unlimited for the first 3 months. That's REGTOO PINK.
Welcome back. In the style of a Drag Race lip sync, I'm going to do a wig reveal so I can be free once again, just like how I started the second half of last week. Drag Race, Season 1, Episode 1, Pilot. It's called Drag on a Dime. It premiered on February 2nd, 2009. It's an episode where they have to make some outfits out of a bunch of crap from the dollar store, and it's all very, very fuzzy looking.
It might have been fuzzy as hell, but the passion for fashion was alive, and it is refreshing just to hear these catchphrases be spoken for the first time.
I know.
Because, like, the repetition of this show, it ultimately kind of gets you down because it feels a little crusty. So like when you hear RuPaul say like, and don't fuck it up, or how he used to say, and may the best woman win, he no longer says that. He says, may the best drag queen win, to be gender inclusive. But like when you're hearing all these phrases for the first time, you're like, yep, I feel like she actually had cognitive recognition of the words that she was saying.
Yes.
One thing that I wish that they would incorporate now that they really don't is being outside or interacting with the real world in more ways, because so much of being a drag queen, like in reality, is being a people person and like dealing with crazy ass people, and like there's just a lot of social elements to it. So if the premise of the show is like, these are the trials and tribulations that you may come up against like being a drag queen, it's way more likely that those trials and tribulations are like dealing with people of the public than like being in a really bad skit. Like you're not gonna be on SNL, like most likely.
Yeah, at some point it became less about doing things that RuPaul had to do at one point and more about just like what would make the most entertaining TV in a controlled environment.
Yes. It's very
Which
like
makes sense.
voidy. It's like you go into the Drag Race void and it's just so detached from the rest of the world. Just like premise wise, I think it would be kind of fun if they had a repeating challenge that had to do with dealing with the public or something.
I feel like they kind of do that when they have like the comedy challenges and there's like people brought in to be an audience, but it doesn't feel
real.
I also love how present RuPaul is in this. Like, there is no like standing 10 feet away from RuPaul in the beginning. Like,
right,
he's just standing in the cluster with everyone else.
Up in the action. Don't you really feel like he kind of got a lot of inspo from Tim Gunn for like in the beginning, and like his outfits and like the way that he talked to the queens in the workroom about their clothes? Like, it's very Tim Gunn-esque. I thought it was really funny to comment on the actual episode when during critique Rue called Victoria Porkchop too regional. I thought that was so good.
Like, maybe you're just too regional.
And like Victoria Porkchop Parker, I believe that's the full name, is the first queen to ever be eliminated from Drag Race and is eliminated in this episode. But what's great about it is that she becomes a really beloved character in the Drag Race franchise. Like, she's referenced all the time. Literally in season 16, the one that's happening now, when the first queen got eliminated, which is the third episode because they did a split premiere, of course. She said in her little confessional thing at the end, like, I'm in really good company. Like, I'd rather be the first to go than to be the second or third, because like that's really forgettable, you know?
Yeah, that is so true.
So
I will say
she's still being
revered.
Yeah.
I find Porkchop to be so like comforting. I love her so much. I really loved when she got eliminated and she was like, I was just glad to represent for the plus size community. And she was like, don't let anyone tell you can't do something because of your size. And that just touched my heart. I just really like her. I think she's so cute.
And she also like had a superiority complex, which is kind of funny. Like on the show, she was just like, I have 20 years of professional experience. Like, some of these other queens need to like check themselves, even though they were ultimately praised way more than Porkchop was. But Porkchop still felt that she had like the professional leg up. You know?
Yes.
I was kind of shook looking at their ages now because, you know, they're all like 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Like, well, now I just have a point of reference for those ages. Like, when I initially watched, I was like, okay, they are adults. I don't know about that. But now being 26, I'm like, oh, these are babies on television. Like, of course they have no clue what's going on.
I don't know if you have this thing, Audrey, but I definitely do/did, which is like, anytime anyone on a reality show reveals their age, I'm always like, please don't be younger than me. Please don't be younger than me. And then they are. And I'm like, shit.
I don't think that, because I'm like, I don't want to be on a reality show. So
Me neither. But there's some like nasty part of me that like, I think, I don't know what it is, but it's not even like I'm afraid of aging, because I'm not. I think it's that I'm afraid of
it's an accomplishment thing.
Yeah, it's an accomplishment thing. It's like as if being on a reality show is like the most accomplishment you can achieve. But being on Drag Race is an accomplishment.
Yeah, being on Drag Race for sure is. But it makes sense that they're young. I mean, drag queens tend to be young, on the young side. And you're going to look for people who have a big personality and haven't been beaten down by the world so much. So
true.
It's good. It's a good choice to cast like a
true.
23-year-old.
I think we can move on pretty much, but I do just want to say that I think the biggest sign of what's to come is the fact that the first ever guest judge was Bob Mackie. Okay, next episode. Season 2, episode 5. Here Comes the Bride, aka the Tyra is a Complete Bitch episode, aired on March 8th, 2010. Wedding bells ring as the queens go from blushing brides to dragzillas in a challenge that weds their drag personas to the perfect grooms. ... themselves. This episode is good as fuck.
I really even, because like by the time we get to later seasons, I'm practically skipping through the damn thing. Like, let me see the actual challenge and let me see the lip sync and the end. And the rest is repetitive filler. I'm just going to be honest, for the most part.
Yeah.
But season 2, episode 5, even the mini challenge I was laughing at. Like the whole like decorate the box thing, and they all had like the dumbest reasons for like why they decorated it the way they did, and Rue was just like laughing at them basically. And it was really funny. That like irreverent humor got degraded over time, and Rue became more and more successful and less close to the competition. Honestly, I mean, at this point she's practically given her job to the queens themselves. She hardly even makes the decisions anymore. So I like, it's just really fun to watch her at this time be really inspired and like hands-on with the girls.
Ultimately, the death of Drag Race culturally, like the inter-Drag Race death, was because of social media. Yeah. Because everyone's monitoring themselves like crazy. And that's why everything is filler now in the non, like challenges.
Confessionals too.
Yeah, because people are so afraid. And like, I think I get it from the perspective of like Black queens, especially because the Drag Race
and
fandom is the Drag Race fandom is like infamously brutal and hateful.
Terrible.
Yeah. And so I get it from their perspective.
We could do an entire episode on the atrocities that have happened via social media about certain queens, and like it literally drove some of them to quit drag. Like they just don't even do it anymore because the fandom like ruined their career. They're trying to set themselves up for like a business trajectory instead of trying to make entertainment. It's like not the number one goal anymore, which sucks. Yeah. I get it. They have a goal. They're trying to like sustain themselves off of being on this show, which is very like a noble goal. I would rather watch an entertaining show than like buy your t-shirt. Like maybe I would buy your t-shirt if I gave a shit. Like there's a way to be entertaining without being antagonistic.
And you know who is a really good example of that is
Alyssa.
Jujubee.
And Jujubee, yeah.
Because Alyssa will play into the, especially in the beginning, played into like the adversarialness. This is Alyssa Edwards of season 5. But
yes,
Jujubee
but she comes out on top. Like you almost like don't take her seriously. It's like she might be saying it, but it's like with like a wink and it's just not that serious. I don't know.
Because Jujubee is in this episode especially, like I want to give her flowers because all she does is just like be a clown.
And she's been in like 8 seasons of Drag Race at this point. Like she shows up constantly.
Yes. How out of touch with reality Tyra is, and the fact that she goes on to win just says so much about how the show has changed over time.
The plot of this episode is essentially that Tyra's being a complete bitch. That's a Tatiana quote. Because she's like being disrespectful in the workroom. She's like singing really loud. She's like not cooperating with the other queens. She'll be shady towards them, blah, blah, blah. And Rue asks on the main stage, which she tends to do, usually at some point during the season, she'll be like, queens, what are the judges not seeing? And then it's like an invitation for all the queens to like tell on each other publicly. Yeah. And so Tatiana tells on Tyra that she's being a complete bitch.
Tatiana?
I don't think that you're seeing that Tyra is the complete bitch.
That was frank.
Thank you.
Jujubee keeps it really real, and she's like, you just need to learn manners. Like, you need to, like, because Rue is like, girls, do you agree that Tyra is a complete bitch? And everyone's like, no. And then, there's mild responses, but Juju keeps it real. She's like, you're not a complete bitch. You just, like, need to learn manners. That behavior, though, the poor behavior of Tyra was rewarded both in that episode and in the entire season because she ends up winning. So that doesn't happen so much anymore. Like you're not gonna have, or very rarely would you be able to make that kind of narrative turnaround for a queen where like they are the villain and then they win. Like that, they don't usually let that happen in an edit anymore.
Yeah. It's so entertaining. And like, okay, one of my main things that I thought was so interesting about this episode is that Matthew Anderson, RuPaul's former collaborator, comes into the workroom and just gives all of the queens extremely applicable and interesting advice on how to make their makeup better.
And Matthew used to do Rue's face all the time, and now no longer does. I think there was some kind of issue.
There was like a falling out, and then Matthew got really sick, and like Willem talked a bunch of shit about it, and it's like a whole thing. But it was really interesting hearing what Matthew had to say, and I was like, wow, imagine if we still got that kind of information on Drag Race. I will say though, a side note, the first episode of season 9 where Gaga comes as a guest judge, and then in Untucked she like gives every single queen very detailed feedback on like what they're doing right and like what she would like to see more of. That is also in the same vein. I loved this episode of season 2.
I really enjoyed the fact that they did boy drag. Like I liked that they did the whole wedding photo thing. That is not likely something that they would do today, just because it's very gendery. They probably wouldn't do it, but I liked the idea, and it was like the results were fun. And then also the fact that they were able to tie in gay marriage into the storyline, and Morgan McMichael's talking about how like she would like to marry her boyfriend, but I was just like, oh my god, like the fact that gay marriage was still a few years away at this point.
I wanted to just say also that my favorites while watching season 2 were Pandora and Jujubee. But I also love Tatiana, but she was just such a little brat on that season. It was hard to love her. But I remember thinking Pandora was like so womanly and like beautiful.
I loved Pandora then. I just watched a video that was all about Pandora and like Pandora's narrative arc through Drag Race, and like because she was like a fan favorite back then. Yeah. And then kept getting basically a bad hand because she got paired with Mimi I'm First in that first Drag Race All-Stars when they made them compete in pairs. So of course they didn't do well. She left fast, and then that really hurt her image amongst the fandom because she had a bad attitude. And then she came back for an All-Stars not that long ago and just, was like good, was fine. Like I feel like she did well, but that initial like excitement around her, she's never really been able to recapture.
We are now going to move on to season 4, episode 8, Frenemies, aka the fallout to the Go Back to Party City Where You Belong episode.
Go back to Party City where you belong.
This episode premiered on March 19th, 2012. Paired up with their best frenemies, the dolls struggle through their differences to pull off live runway duets. This was a very interesting and entertaining episode. My favorite part of the episode is Fifi's "I wear heels that heighten the mood."
Yeah.
She sounds like Tiny Tim, like to a T.
Fifi deserves like the fattest check, honestly, for providing the level of like pettiness and bitterness on screen that like no other queen is usually willing to just give, because nobody wants to be perceived that way. But she just felt it so truly that
she couldn't stop herself.
She literally couldn't hide it, which is amazing television. You can just so clearly see the disdain for somebody like Sharon Needles. Like they are just like two characters from different cartoons that just cannot be friends. Like they're just not friend material. I wanted to say though, like there is a big production quality difference between season 2 and season 4. Like hopping into this episode, you're like, okay, this feels a little more funded and a little more real, but it also actually no, it hasn't lost its greatness. The season 4 is still very much in the greatness, but it is just a little more like established in their routines, because that's what Drag Race became, is like a routine. And I'm really glad that we didn't cover any skit episodes.
The skit episodes, I did not pick any of those because they are atrociously horrible.
Like, without fail, it is not, it'd be one thing if they were horrible in an entertaining way, but they're horrible in a boring way, which is just the worst, because you're watching people who really, most of them have never acted in any serious way. They don't have comedy experience. There is no like justifiable reason as to why they would thrive in that environment.
No.
So they just keep putting them in it though, regardless. It's so weird.
Also, it feels like the skits are written by like AI.
And later on, some of their lip syncing group choreo challenges also have that feeling of just being completely BS. Like, because sometimes it's like the creative of the show, like the staff of the show are the ones who set up the queens to look stupid or to make an episode that is not entertaining. Sometimes it's not even the queen's fault, it's the show's fault.
Agreed.
But this episode is not that situation.
Yes.
The main thing with this episode and what became like famous Drag Race lore is that Willem was kicked off the show on this episode for breaking rules behind the scenes, which had to do with like communication, because you are not allowed to have a phone. You're not allowed to have connection to the outside world when you're on Drag Race. You are basically locked in a hotel room in your off time and you get nothing media wise. I'm pretty sure she just like had access to a phone or something. She had outside communications.
Okay, so this is like a highly, highly debated subject because, as we all know, Willem has a huge mouth and a podcast. And which, by the way, Race Chaser is amazing if you've never listened to it. Great podcast. It's her in Alaska. And she has said that it was that she like pissed off the producers, like something sexual. She kind of frames it like she like cracked their code, or she was like onto them in some way.
I think she like wants to feel like she has the upper hand when she got like embarrassed.
Which like who knows publicly. Though.
Here's the thing. They knew everything that I did because as I was breaking the rules, I was telling them, trying to get kicked off. I got everybody high and drunk all the time. Tried to take feather fans. I tried to take RuPaul's Iron Fist shoes that were there. We gave them money to get us stuff at stores. They didn't. They weren't feeding us right. They were giving us like literally $75 for 12 people to eat. That makes like $6.75 per person or something at like 10:30 at night. So I broke those rules with going to the store and getting stuff, but I brought other girls so they couldn't kick us all off. They were doing something during the second episode of Untucked, which I didn't approve of. It was like emotional manipulation of Jiggly on the day her mom died, the first anniversary. I wasn't there for it. I spoke up and they said, well, if you don't like it, you can leave. So I left. And then they only had that half hour to make Untucked where they were deliberating and doing, you know, the judging and figuring out who they were going to put in the bottom and stuff. So after I left and went outside, Jen, the producer, comes running back. She's like, we need you back in. We need you. Like, we're sorry. We're sorry. And I was like, I don't need you to be sorry. I need Stephen Korff to be sorry, who was the one that told me I could get out. So I made him step out of production and apologized to me, and then I went back in the room. And then after that, I broke the biggest reality rule there is. The last night at that club where where there was a little rap party, he was the one I was making out with.
It's just not above Willem to twist the truth so that she seems like she has the upper hand. And like, that's the funny thing about Alaska and Willem being on a podcast together, is that Alaska's like a Drag Race fanatic, and Alaska loves Drag Race and ultimately like wants them to love her too. Yeah. You know, wants to be invited back, wants to have those opportunities, but by pairing with Willem to do this podcast, she kind of shoots herself in the foot. And they also have a company together called Mom, which is, wow, World of Wonder upside down. Yeah. Just pretty clever. So she hasn't really put herself in the situation to be loved by them. However, she did win an all-star season, and she is so good at Drag Race that like they kind of can't get rid of her. Like she knows she's that powerful, basically.
Yeah. I mean, she's so beloved, and I mean, I do think that at the end of the day, like, Race Chaser is just getting more people to watch Drag Race.
Yeah. Like, it's still in service of the show, regardless of if Willem is up on the podcast talking shit, because she is.
Yeah.
Alaska almost never agrees with her. Like she literally will just not say anything. Like if she doesn't want to refute the point, she'll just be like, okay, anyways.
Yeah. Or like Willem will go off and then she'll be like, oh. But I really love Latrice, who, of course, as one of 6 people on this episode, gets a lot of attention. She is someone who I would love to have a meal with in real life, someone I would love to just chat with. Her lip sync to Natural Woman in her season is incredible. She also is dressed like she's pregnant and she's like singing to her baby. It's so good. Like that is one of those amazing Drag Race lip syncs where it like goes beyond just like being fierce and goes into like an actual expression of something that's really beautiful.
It's a great cast. Like the season 4 cast is really
It is
strong.
really good. Yeah.
And I enjoyed the lie detector segment because I knew that they only did it to like kind of tease the end. I feel like, because they show this little confessional of Willem where she's like, I'm hoping they're not going to ask me certain questions. And you're kind of like, okay, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And then at the end, she gets thrown off. She also throws up on the side of the stage.
So weird.
Which to me, I would have just cut that from the episode because you've already got enough. Like it just feels like a little non sequitur. Like it feels like an unnecessary detail. I don't think you needed to show her throwing up and then getting kicked off.
But I mean, that just goes to show that maybe she did piss them off in a more personal way.
She is a stubborn queen for sure.
Yeah.
So like I could see her being really frustrating in that context.
Just has a giant ego.
Yeah, huge ego. And she loves to say like, well, I've been spending the last 10 years doing television and movies, and a lot of these queens can't say that. She's annoying in season 4, but I have a love for her at this point.
Yeah. They also do give her that moment in the episode where she's like, I'm kind of weak in the friends department. And like, so she does get that like humanizing moment.
She does have an ego, but that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, she's a drag queen. Like, that makes sense. Drag queens should not be held to a standard of like
being like Mother Teresa. Like, okay, obviously.
Like, they did not sign up to be like the representatives of humankind. Like,
No. And that's where like the concept of the show being entertaining and today's political and social climate like completely clash.
Yes.
Because drag queens are not running for president. Like, can you all please, not that that literally means anything anymore, but like, you know what I mean? Just, they should not be held to those standards.
Like respectability standards.
Yeah, the Drag Race fandom has like beaten them into that submission because so many people who identify as like being on the left or in the LGBTQ community have like crazy strict views of things and are so willing to like online, like to go online and just brutalize people for doing something that they perceive to be out of line. And it could be something so minor.
I think that for now we should move on to season 6, episode 4, which is Shade the Rusical, premiered on March 17th, 2014, aka the Courtney vs. Adore musical theater showdown. The queens enter the world of musical theater with guest judges composer Lucian Piani and Cheryl Lee Ralph. I'm laughing because Lucian Piani is like RuPaul's composer, and composer feels like a very large overstatement, but
producer.
I guess it's technically true. This episode like truly cemented my obsession with this show, especially at the time, like into the next dimension.
This episode feels like maybe the greatest. Like it's like one of those peak moments.
Yeah.
Because it's got all the things going for it at once, which is just so rare for Drag Race. But yeah, I have to say, Lucian Piani should really thank his lucky stars because he gets featured on this show constantly and like nobody knows who he is. Like, he like his music is not good. No, and I'm like, this man is so lucky.
I know. It's like all those people that are like in RuPaul's stable. Like Michelle. It's like the same thing as Michelle.
Okay, but at least Michelle's valid. Like, who the hell is this man? To the point where, like, he's bringing his goddamn sister on to choreograph. Like, the nepotism runs deep. Like, we don't even know who this man is, and he's allowed to bring on his sister.
Wait, I didn't even... Right.
Yeah, she choreographed. Because this is pre-Todrick Hall. This is pre-Jamal Sims. They, for a few seasons... they really relied on Todrick Hall and Jamal Sims to like choreograph.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's great about this episode is that like those are live vocals.
Yes.
And that is so rare on this show.
It's so rare.
It's very clear that they knew we have 2 American Idol contestants here.
Yeah.
We can actually realistically get away with attempting to do a live vocals challenge.
Yes. Because
And-
Vendela can sing too.
Yeah, they were like, we have enough competent singers that we can actually try to do it. And I thought they captured it pretty well. Like,
Yeah.
even, you know, when the people who are tone deaf, like, did a pretty good job.
They did. I think, so that was one of the storylines of the episode is that Cotniact was on, wasn't it like Australian Idol? Yeah. And then Adore was on American Idol. And like, they are really different, which is cool too. Courtney's like super duper polished. That, to me, that was a woman. Is a woman. And Courtney is identified as non-binary like since before that was even like a thing that many people identified as. And bitch, she's so pretty.
Let me be your star. That's her.
Watch me be your star.
The other thing is looking back at it, it's like, and this is with only respect in my heart, it's like good but not that good.
Not that good. It's not that good. And
Like,
when Cheryl Lee Ralph is like superstar, I'm like, Cheryl Lee Ralph knows they're not like, it's not like amazing, but it's good for maybe what you were expecting.
I know I said something conflicting earlier, but I do feel like the true golden age of Drag Race ended with season 6. Because I feel like,
and like no one agrees with that. Literally everybody doesn't. Everybody says it basically died after 9, which I can pretty much agree with.
Is also like kind of true
overall. But like for me and for us, it was 6. Like 6 was the peak, and 7 was a disappointment to me. Like every season after was somewhat of a disappointment to me.
Yeah, I agree. To me, I think that the thing that made it start to suck was that the self-referentialness started to really kick in a way that like wasn't funny
before that.
Yeah, season 7 is when Katya and Trixie came on the scene. So like there's that. And that's significant, obviously, but I mean, for us,
like,
it just is
also
what
like
it is.
They weren't the focal point of season 7. They got their glory post season 7.
Yeah.
Trixie went home early, got saved, and then got eliminated again. Katya lasted like maybe a little over half, something like that.
Yeah.
And then you've got, or she made it pretty close to the end because it was Kennedy, Davenport, Katya, Pearl, Violet, and Ginger.
Good memory.
Yeah.
Damn.
I don't, that just kind of came back to me. I saw the lineup.
Yeah.
It was kind of shocking to me at the time. We're not even supposed to be talking about season 7, but just like Pearl, Violet, and Ginger, I felt like Katya or Kennedy would be better than Pearl in that lineup. Or even
was also
than Ginger. Like, I know Ginger's talented and stuff.
I know.
But like, I don't have a passion.
It was just like a crazy Caucasian top 3.
It was.
Like,
and that was another weird thing about season 7 is that it felt really white.
I felt like the season 6 cast was like beautiful chef's kiss. Like, you had so many good people. You had Laganja, you had Gia, you had Trinity, you had Bendela, Adore, Bianca, Courtney.
Oh my God. We skipped. It's kind of sad we skipped Alyssa and Jinx.
I know. There's just so much good shit.
Oh my God.
And I was trying to reach a little bit further into the later seasons just because I know there are people that listen to our show that haven't seen the early seasons.
Yeah.
But that's why we're talking about the early seasons, because they need to be discussed more by people in our peer group.
Yeah, and not because like a lot of times it's like people who are older than us who were watching from the very beginning.
That I actually think that Trixie and Katya, even though I'm very entertained by them, I do think that they were kind of the two horsemen of the Drag Race kind of dying. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
because they almost like took off too far on their own.
well, and you know what? Like, that's really cool. Like,
Which
I'm
is
really
cool,
glad
yeah.
for them. But it was almost like
Me too.
being affiliated with the show that hard almost became like corny or something.
Yeah, because they don't even well,
Trixie
it's kind of like
It's
a
like
Willem,
Willem.
Alaska
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Like Katya like doesn't watch the show anymore, doesn't really give a fuck. Trixie, I don't think she really watches the show that much either anymore, but she's too much of a businesswoman to slander it. I mean, she's not, because she won. She's not going to slander it.
She won All Stars, and she had no fucking business winning All Stars. That shit will always annoy me. I'm sorry to the Trixie stans. Shangela was right there.
Michelle's boobs are insane in season 6.
True.
We got to mention that. They are literally at her chin. And what's very ironic about that now is that she no longer has them because she got her implants removed because they gave her an illness. And she made an entire documentary about boob implant illness.
Yes.
Which I just think is kind of ironic after literally every queen on the planet made a comment to Michelle or like made a joke about her boobs.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yep. So now moving on to season 9, episode 13, Reunited. This episode aired on June 16th, 2017. 1 week away from the finale, the contestants gather around to discuss the season's biggest moments, all tea, all shade. To me, this is the only Reunited that has ever been worth watching.
Yeah, which is like unexpected because it's late for us. Like we kind of lost a bit of passion at this point. But there's so many good conflicts going on at one time.
And okay, so what we were talking about earlier about like certain queens getting really hated on social media, kind of the central issue in this Reunited is that there's Valentina, who is this really beautiful Mexican drag queen, very like kind of like delusional, like that's part of her thing, but she has this like really intense fan base, and she got eliminated from the show after she straight up did not learn the words to Ariana Grande's Greedy and was wearing a mask to hide it, and then RuPaul was like, take off your mask, what the fuck?
It was like the mask was a part of her look, and then obviously you would take the mask off for a lip sync, no shit, and she said, can I keep it on, please?
She said, I'd like to keep it on, please. And RuPaul was like, absolutely the fuck not. And then she didn't know the words, so she got controversially kicked off the show, and she had been lip syncing against Nina Bonina Brown, who was like a very odd duck for Drag Race. Like, she did really weird looks. Like, she was an amazing artist, and she is an amazing artist.
Like a painter.
But like, yeah, she was like a painter and just did crazy stuff with like body padding. But she never came on there being like, I'm an artist and this is my art. No. She was just like a weirdo.
And she had a lot of like confidence issues on the show that were interesting to like watch somebody parse out in a room of narcissists. Yeah. Like she's like really, you can tell she went really far inward and was just kind of keeping to herself because I think I would feel probably kind of similar in that room. It's like, I'm not going to be heard. Nobody really gets me anyway. It's like none of these queens are like her brand. So it just felt kind of dissonant, I'm guessing.
Yeah. She's also a black woman, and people were messaging her like insanely hateful shit, being like, you should have volunteered yourself to be eliminated so Valentina wouldn't have been eliminated. And Valentina basically just like denied it all.
In the reunion,
and like the girls just go in on her, and you have Shea Coulee just like stirring the pot relentlessly.
Eureka. Meanwhile, now Valentina is the host of Drag Race Mexico.
Right, which makes sense.
It does, but it's
Yeah.
kind of funny. Oh, and like that famous Aja quote, like, you look like Linda
Oh, yes.
Evangelista, you're a model.
You're a model. I love Pheromone. As we know, I met her at DragCon. Have pictures of that. She is one of my favorites just because she's so beautiful. A couple things that I thought were comically dated. One of them was RuPaul making the participation trophy comment.
Mm-hmm.
Where he was just like very boomery to make the participation trophy comment. And then also the way that RuPaul kept being like, well, online fans had to say X, Y, and Z. And I just don't feel like they even acknowledge that now.
Season 9, so the episode after this one, like the actual finale, was the first time that they did that whole spin the wheel lip sync for the win thing.
Yes.
That produced that moment that a lot of people loved, which was when Sasha Velour took her wig off and shook the rose petals out of it to I get
So
so
emotional.
emotional. Which was a great like TV moment, but the problem from then on was that every time they did a lip sync battle for the crown, every queen would try to recreate a similar moment.
To
and
a
it-
reveal.
Yes, and there was one year, I forget who even it was, but there was a queen who tried to release a butterfly and it just like didn't
A bunch
work.
of butterflies.
Yeah, it's just like they just like didn't
was that?
go.
They died. They fell on
Yeah.
the floor dead. It
I know.
was
Who was
Asia O'Hara.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and like that's such a huge bummer. Like, I understand, like, you want to make a big impression and it's getting more and more difficult to do that. So
Yes.
that the butterflies did not work out.
No. And like the best part was they like fell out of the wig like dead, and there's like a zoom in on like the dead butterfly. Oh god. It was
yeah.
really entertaining at the very least.
But season 9 is where the RuPaul really started outsourcing decision making. And it has only gotten worse. Literally, like, at this point, like, for example, in season 16 now, they've done this whole rate a queen system. Because it's just like Ru finds all these different methods to outsource the decision making to the contestants themselves.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Instead of just making the call, you know. I would rather see a harsh decision be made from a judges panel than have queens have the queens votes be averaged out. Like, why have a judges panel if this is self-elimination? Like,
yeah.
Like, if this was like a Big Brother situation, that makes sense because these people are self-contained and it's like Lord of the Flies. But you can't have a Lord of the Flies elimination system when there's a judges panel. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and it's also like, oh, okay, all the queens are gonna be boring and not even like get into it about who they're eliminating in any real way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
and
agree.
the with All Stars, it became self-eliminating, which we will talk about in a moment.
Okay, last but not least, our cheating. All Stars 2, Episode 5, Revenge of the Queens, aka the Shut Up and Drive lip sync episode. Okay, well, this aired on September 22nd, 2016. What an incredible fall summer with All Stars 2. The queens must perform a live stand-up comedy act in front of an audience of judgmental drag queens. Let's not forget, this is the episode where the mirror of the workroom is revealed to be a two-way mirror. The eliminated queens come back in. Fifi O'Hara is revealed as having been talking shit. It's just the descent of Fifi after that.
Yeah, and it's like the first time they pulled that gag, so the gag actually hit.
Yeah.
They had pulled bringing back a queen gag before, but they had never pulled bringing a whole cast back. And now they do it basically every time now,
Yeah.
which sucks.
And everyone's always like, they're going to switch up the format. They're going to switch up the format. But it's like never, it's always so convoluted at this point. All-Stars 2 had an incredible cast and a really good format switch up at the same time.
Yeah.
And that, I just don't know if they can do that now. Because they have so many
you
franchises.
Without changing the format in an extreme way, you can't capture that again.
Yeah.
What was amazing about this particular episode is that the All-Stars rules actually had a major impact in a way that they couldn't have planned 100%. They can set it up, and there is a lot of talk about that, like the producers kind of setting up the pins to fall in a way that they want.
Yeah.
But like the thing that they can't account for is which lipsticks Alyssa and Tatiana would pull for who they would eliminate out of the bottom. So this was like, there was so many layers to this one, because so they bring the whole cast back. They bring all the eliminated queens back. They put them into pairs to compete in pairs. One queen who's still in the competition and one queen who's been eliminated already. Whoever were the top 2 pairs from the challenge, the queen who was brought back from elimination would be the 2 queens to then lip sync for their legacy and their life concurrently.
Yeah.
It was Tatiana and Alyssa. They end up doing this like perfectly choreographed and complimentary lip sync to Shut Up and Drive, and everybody's just amazed.
And they're wearing like black and white versions of the same outfit, like the same wig. Like, it's crazy good.
And it's like, oh my God, how is Ru gonna make this call? Like, this was so good. So then Ru's like, Tatiana, Shantae, you stay. And then Alyssa looks so sad. And then she's like, Alyssa Edwards, Shantae, you also stay. And they like lose their shit. They both get to stay in the competition as eliminated queens, and now they have the power to choose who will get booted from the bottom. So these queens have gone from off the show entirely to now deciding the fate of queens who've been there. I mean, it would have been crazy if one of them chose Roxy and one of them chose Fifi, because then, hypothetically, I think they both would leave. I think it would be a double elimination.
Yeah.
But they both chose Fifi because Fifi was bitter and like didn't do well. Like, she just didn't.
But I think that if you are someone who wants to get into Drag Race, I think just in terms of like caliber, All-Stars 2 is an amazing place to maybe start. But if you watch the other seasons before, it'll make you appreciate it so much more. Because
I don't think you can appreciate it right.
Yeah. There had been like a 5-year gap between the first All-Stars and All-Stars 2. So like all these seasons were able to build up with all these incredible people, and then they brought them all back at once. Whereas the problem now with All-Stars is that they do an All-Stars like every year. So
and there's like no one left over. There's like there's slim pickings for good queens to be on it. This to me is the only double save that ever felt good.
Yeah, agreed.
And I could tell as an audience member was the right call, because a lot of times when people get double saved, it's like, okay, like sure.
Yeah.
I loved Alaska. Alaska was like dying laughing in the background of the lip sync. Like, she's like really funny. She's like losing her shit because she's having such a good time.
Yes.
And I love watching the queens in the background of lip syncs. It's always very funny.
Yes. I mean, it's the best lip sync, I think, in Drag Race history. Also, just like Tatiana being able to come back. I wanted her in that top 4 so much more than Roxy. Like, that was fucked up.
Yeah, that was fucked. I wish she had been in the end.
I feel like she could have won.
No, they would have given it to Alaska for sure, but she could have gotten to the end.
I could not watch the latest episode of Drag Race because they have this shit under lock and key.
You have to have a cable login, basically. That's all. Because you can watch it on MTV Live on Fridays, or if you can log in online to MTV via cable, then you can watch it there, which is what we used to do. But our parents cut the cord, so
so now we're
over.
Down on our luck. Yeah.
Now I literally watched it live on television on Friday. We've basically said our opinions about current Drag Race, but it was season 16, episode 3, and this was the first episode where the whole cast was together because they did a split premiere. So you've got 7 in the first episode, 7 in the second, and they do that so they can like introduce them and give them more time to be introduced. I'm not a huge fan of the split premiere concept. Sometimes it can result in a fucked up first elimination.
Yeah.
But then it usually gets saved anyway because they all come back or something. You know, they try to like counteract if something fucked up happened. The main thing that comes to mind when I watch now is how there's too many blueprints for the new queens.
Yeah.
Like they have too many thoughts in their heads of certain paths they could try to follow, and there's nothing worse than trying to watch someone control their narrative on television. Like it hurts. It literally hurts to watch. The one good thing I can say is that I do feel that they are willing to like be mean to each other, so I guess that's good.
Thank God.
Because they definitely, like in Untucked, like I think they all got drunk like too fast and started saying really shady shit, and I was like, whoa.
I thought they took away the alcohol.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I don't even have a prediction yet. It's like too soon.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I'll watch it all, but if I do, so far it's like I've seen every season. Like I just can't like shake the habit. It's really difficult.
Yeah. I didn't watch the last season, and I know that's messed up. And I think I am
it's
gonna
really
watch
not.
it just to catch up.
It's really not
well,
messed
that's
up.
how you just know that it's like gone to the dogs, because as you guys have heard, like I saw so many queens live. I didn't even mention all the shows I've been to. Like I was a really, really, really passionate fan of the show. Like really passionate fan of the show. And I just, at some point, it was the season with Evie Oddly. It was season 10. I just got so fucking bored. I was like, I don't think I can do this.
It just got boring.
It got boring.
Drag is not boring. Drag race is boring.
Yes.
There's a difference. Drag
Yes.
will not be boring. Going to shows is always fun. Like it's just this particular franchise that has gotten crusty, and I kind of can sense change on the horizon. There's a lot of theories about who might take Ru's place. I think it could be Shay or Bob.
Simone would be fun.
Simone. Yeah, there's a lot of good options.
Yeah. Bob would also be good. I also think, okay, bottom line, with all of like the strong opinions we've expressed, like I don't know if I would be the person I am today if it wasn't for Drag Race. When I started watching it, how it's impacted my friends, and just like our whole culture would be so different if it weren't for Drag Race. Like, would people have started saying like slay and like boots the house down if it wasn't for Drag Race? Like,
nope.
And it starts like someone watched that show, and then it's like people always say it's like black women give things to black gay men, and then white gays take it from the black gays, and then white girls take it from the white gays, and it all just
a trickle down.
It's all just this trickle down. The influence of black women on American culture, which is obviously really significant,
is very underrated.
It's very underappreciated and like under acknowledged. I'm very happy this show exists. I'd never want it to end, even if it is not something I'm watching anymore.
A shell of its former self.
Yeah, like that's none of our business if that's true. I'm happy that gays are making money off of being gay.
Yeah, me too.
That's just nice.
This is the end of season 9.
Yes. Also, like, this was like a really high level, like, context episode. So I hope that you watch Drag Race. If you don't, I hope that this was just nice background chatter for your life. And this was the finale of season 9.
We will be taking a break for a few weeks. We're going to Florida pretty soon.
I know, with our parents and Josh.
So my guess is probably after that.
That's kind of crazy. We haven't taken that long of a break in so long.
It's actually not that long. It's in 2 weeks.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh God. All right.
Yeah,
well,
it's actually not that long.
We'll be back all too soon.
Yeah, so take the time, revisit this season. I feel this season was actually very strong.
Yeah.
Looking back at the thumbnails, I'm like, yes, we kind of did something here. We tried to pick movies where we had archival.
There's a lot of good archival for this one. Let us just
Yes.
say, so many pictures of us with drag queens. So, we'll see you on the flip side. But until then,
You can find more from us at evergreenpodcast.com/sleepover-cinema and keep up with our latest creative projects at twopinkproductions.com. We're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Sleepover Cinema and post a full video version of each episode on YouTube every Thursday. You can follow me, Audrey, at Audrey A. Leach on everything.
and you can follow me, Hannah, at Real Judy Garland on Instagram and at Lana Von Trapp on Twitter. And you can join our Discord server at the link in the episode description.
You can check out our merch at twopinkproductions.com/shop. We have t-shirts, sweatshirts, stickers, and more.
And if you were an early Drag Race watcher, if you just got into it, if you and your sister watch it together, share this episode with her and leave us a kind old 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, being nice to us.
Sleepover Cinema is a production of Evergreen Podcasts, produced, edited, and engineered by us, Hannah and Audrey Leach. Sleepover Cinema is mixed by Sean Rule Hoffman with theme music by Josh Perlman Hall. Executive producer is Michael D'Aloia.
May the best woman win. Beast!